Hello and welcome to Skills to Pay the Bills. I am your host, Tia Young, and we have a fantastic show for you today. Our very special guest is a multi-award winning broadcast journalist for 47 years and counting, a trailblazer who was the first woman sports anchor on TV in Wichita, Kansas, St. Louis, Missouri, and Washington, D.C. She was an associate producer for the 2006 Grammy Awards, a trailblazer in the fight for civil rights, and continues that fight even today. And last but not least, she was the host of the Maggie Linton Show, a 2-hour daily talk show on SiriusXM Urban View, Channel 126, from 2013 to 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Maggie Linton to Skills to Pay the Bills. Maggie, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so good to have
be
you
here with you.
I know how busy you are, so I am truly grateful.
Sometimes that's an illusion, you know. So.
Well, we got a lot to cover today, so we're going to get right started.
Right.
Now, your broadcasting career has spanned over 47 years, beginning in 1972. Can you give us some specific opportunities that you've had during that time?
Well, the first opportunity came, I changed majors 5 times.
No.
Before I found it, I was going to be a civil rights attorney. When you mentioned civil rights, I mean, that's kind of the way I was raised, be aware of the freedoms that are needed for everyone.
Yes.
And I credit my parents with that, but my first break really came as I changed majors the 5th time. My roommate, a woman named Tony Wills, said to me, "So what are you going to do this semester?" I said, "I have no idea." And she said, "Why don't you take this sports broadcasting class with me?" And I said, "Okay." So I went to sign up, and the guy who was the voice of the University of Kansas Jayhawks, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, said to me, "Well, what other journalism classes have you had?" And I said, "None." And he says, "You can't take, this is an upper division class." I said, "Well, can I take my beginning class and this class together?" He said, "Yeah." I went and changed my whole schedule.
Change your whole schedule?
Change the whole schedule. 3 weeks into that, he came to me and he said, "We really like your voice, you know your sports." And thanks that to my dad, who, you know, totally integrated my sister and I into all kinds of sports. And he said, "We'd really like you to do the noon and 6 o'clock sports while we're on the Big 8 tour," because that's what it was back then. It was the Big 8, not the Big 12. So I did. And at the end of that semester, they offered me a job with the university radio station. But it was, you know, the main station for the whole university broadcast. It was not just going into the dorms. It was going out. Like, it was a 50,000 watt station at that point.
So you had to be, like your early 20s? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, that by the time I changed majors the 5th time, yes.
5 times, whoa.
Yeah. But now, I got, you know, it's like once you know what you're supposed to do, everything smooths out. And that's exactly what happened. So
you were just testing the waters with...
Yeah, I started out with civil rights, then I went to sociology, because I always wanted to help people. And then from sociology, I went to American Studies to human relations, and then kept that as a double major and went to radio, TV, film.
But all of those disciplines, I'm sure, help out a lot. I mean,
well, I always tell young people, don't be afraid to take a job, because you learn what you don't want to do. Right. As well as what you may want to do.
Right.
And it's really the truth. I mean, you know, while going to school, I worked and went to school because I didn't want to live in the dorm. My parents said, "You don't live in a dorm, we don't pay for it." So I was a short order cook at a bar and restaurant. I learned how to do drinks, you know, went to a little bit of school there. Was a records clerk for the University of Kansas Alumni Association. I did a lot of things.
Wow.
And worked for the telephone company. Was a long distance telephone operator. So I learned what I didn't want to do, but I also learned what I wanted to do.
What you wanted to do,
yeah.
That's right. Now, you were born and raised in Leavenworth, Kansas?
Right. I'm actually an Army brat, so I was actually born in Fort Leavenworth, but raised in Leavenworth my whole life, but we didn't move around. Because my dad and mom were older, and so by the time we came along, my dad was getting out of the service and getting ready to start his own business. He was a barber.
So as an Army brat,
were
you going across the world or just right over here?
The world came to us.
The world came to you?
Yeah. Yeah, the world came to us.
And then you attended the University of Kansas, where you majored, as you said earlier, radio, TV, and film.
Right.
So, and we kind of talked about when just a few minutes ago that your early vision was to be a civil rights attorney. Is that where you started out?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to do. But I took poli-sci for 1 whole year, and I thought, geez, I really don't want to do this. Because The process, a lot of people don't realize that when you want to go to law school, you've got to do all this other stuff for your bachelor's. And then you go to law school, and you still, as you're going to law school, you begin to hone exactly which part of, but you're really just going to law school. Yeah. As you are with anything else, you're constantly learning. And I just didn't want to do all that because the door opened for me with broadcasting, and that was what I was supposed to be doing.
Right, and that's something. Now you talk about some of the men and women who served as your mentors. In my opinion, I think that's very important because without mentors, you just kind of coast along. Can you talk a little bit about some of those mentors?
I have had so many wonderful mentors, and many of them have been men because of the choice of my career. Yeah. But I mentioned Jerry Bailey. Actually, my very first mentors were really my parents. They sent us out the door saying, you cannot use being black and a woman as a reason for failure. That's a reason for success. So they were our first mentors. Proper English had to be used in our home. The work ethic of do it right the first time so you don't have to go back and do it again. Because they had come from the South. Right. You know, my dad from Georgia, my mom she was born in Mississippi but raised in Tennessee.
Were they educators?
No.
No, really?
No,
okay,
no,
good.
Not at all. My dad got into the Army, was in there for 30 years, came out as a master sergeant, and then he got into real estate. He was flipping houses in the 50s and 60s when it wasn't called flipping houses. Yeah. He was helping people that he knew be able to get into homes.
That's amazing.
And he kind of worked with the city council and found out about that. My mom owned her own beauty shop. Yeah. But she started out, how she got out of the Deep South was working as what was then known as a governess, now it's a nanny, for a couple of colonels in the Army. And that's how she got to Fort Leavenworth, and that's how my dad got to Fort Leavenworth, and that's where they met each other.
So, and when you said us, so that means you have brothers
I have
and sisters?
one sister.
You have one sister?
One sister who's a year older than me, 16 months older than me. But they were my first mentors. And then they made sure that we were constantly aware of what's going on. But once I got into broadcasting, Jerry Bailey gave me my first break. A guy who recently retired and passed away was the voice of the Jayhawks for color commentary. His name was Max Falkenstein. They looked out for me. When I moved to Wichita, Kansas, a guy named Martin Umansky was the owner of the station, and it was an ABC affiliate. And you know, again, making sure, giving me encouragement, that kind of stuff. You know, to put a black woman on doing sports in 1974, you know, but I knew my stuff. And so that helped. And then moving to St. Louis, didn't have as many mentors except for two, and it turned out to be great. One of the first weeks that I was there, and I don't know if it still happens in St. Louis, but a number of the stations, people new to town come together and you are introduced and that kind of stuff. And a guy named Ted Koppler owned a TV station there called KPLR. It was an independent station at that point. And I met his wife, Nancy. And when I first moved to St. Louis, I moved to do news, and I did not like news. And so 6 months into it, I just said, but I gave Nancy a call.
You didn't like it?
No, I don't like news. Yeah. I like to listen to news, but I don't want to be the person delivering, because it just drudges along all the time. Sporting events, they start, they end, you know, yay Nats, I hope they're doing well. My Kansas City Chiefs are doing pretty well. So, you know, I have that love of sports, again, because of my dad. And Nancy came to me when she heard I was going to be leaving my other job. She said, you know, we have a sports opening. And I go, no, you don't. She said a guy named Al Roboski, who was known as the Mad Hungarian, a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, had just been picked up by the Kansas City, I guess it was the Royals. And I had to say, because a lot of people may not know, but the Oakland A's,
Kansas City Royals?
Royals are the baseball team.
Okay.
But years ago, now the Oakland A's were the Kansas City Athletics, and they moved from Kansas City to Oakland.
Oh,
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
a certain age, anyway.
Right.
But anyway, they opened the door for me to become a full-time sports anchor again for a nightly newscast. And the beauty of it was my parents lived in Leavenworth, I lived in St. Louis, but because of cable TV, they could watch me every night.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Well, you know, you mentioned a little bit about you're in a field now. You're embarking upon a field that is basically for men. It was just kind of taboo for women, and
Right.
especially a woman of color. Did you have any experiences that were negative, or did those mentors
I
look
have
out
to
for
tell
you and
you
you
know,
didn't?
I often think about it, but I have never had any really bad experiences at all. And back then, you know, now they have rooms set up for the media to come in and talk and stuff like that. But back then they didn't. You went into the locker room. But the thing is, I always had a cameraman and a sound man with me. So in a sense, they were my protection. Nowadays, people go out on one-person crews and that kind of stuff, or may just have one other person with them.
Right.
And you know, so times have changed. But we had heavy equipment. I didn't have to worry about the equipment. But I never was disrespected. And I think a lot of that has to do with the demeanor that I had. I mean, I'd seen guys before. I'd worked with KU athletes, and Ted Owens and Don Famborough, who were the coaches, head coaches of football and basketball for the University of Kansas, were great to me. And I had to write a formal letter asking them if I could interview the athletes, a couple of whom I were dating, but still, Ted and I to this day are still good friends.
Well, I gotta ask this: Did you get to go into the locker rooms?
Yes.
That you did, and you didn't have a problem with the guys?
No,
Really?
in fact, at the University of Nebraska, I remember I was doing color for the KU football team, and they would not allow women into the press area. That's how crazy it was back then. Wouldn't even allow us in, and so I got ready to go into the press area, and they said no women are allowed. I said, okay, what am I supposed to do? They said, well, just go out and find a seat. Well, I managed to squeeze in kind of near the press area. But after the game, I walked right into the KU locker room without any problems. And everybody's going, hey, Maggie, how's it going? So
all right.
It's crazy. But even on the professional level, after I moved here to Washington and in St. Louis, no, I never was blocked from anything. In fact, I had one of the last interviews when the Don Coryell was fired from the then St. Louis Cardinals, not St. Louis Rams, but the St. Louis Cardinals, and they had the same name for the baseball team and the football team.
Right.
I got the last interview with him, and he and I remained friends until he passed away.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short station break, but we will return after these important messages. Don't touch that dial.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. You're watching Skills to Pay the Bills, and with today's special guest, the great broadcast trailblazing journalist, Maggie Linton. Maggie, before the break, I wanted to, as you were talking earlier and you talked about the civil rights, that's how you wanted to go in. I was thinking about Nancy Sinatra, and I don't know if you remember this, these boots are made for walking, I'm gonna walk all over you.
Yeah.
It made me think about you as you walked your way through the civil rights movement. Can you talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you had during that
Yeah,
time?
never arrested, but did a lot of picketing. My dad was, even when he passed away, he was state treasurer for the NAACP. And how we used to visit cities was my dad, because he was always an officer generally in the Leavenworth chapter and also in the state chapter, he'd always go to the conventions. And we would go to the conventions with him. Now, my dad didn't expect, our mom didn't expect us to see sit there and listen to everything that was said, but all the keynote speakers and everything like that, Roy Wilkins, George Harvey,
King.
all of those, Dr. King, we were there. We were able to listen to it. But while we were there, my mom would make sure we took in the culture of the cities. So if it was in Cleveland, then we had cousins there, but we would make sure, go to a game, go down to the lake, do things like that culturally. In Chicago, it was making sure that we took in a play or something along those lines and went to the Shed museums. Those were the kind of things that are free. So much of it is free, and so many people don't take advantage of that.
You're right.
And my parents were very aware that they didn't just want us to know about being black, but fit comfortably into the world. And people are so often are waiting for someone else to introduce them to the world when they can do it themselves. Open up a book, do that kind of thing. Go to a museum. If the Kennedy Center, we're blessed in this area. Their Millennium Stage has all kinds of things that we can go to that doesn't cost a dime. Our time, you have to put up with a little bit of traffic, but it's there for everyone to take and to enjoy.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And people don't think about all of the free things, as you said, so you don't have to have a lot of money
Exactly.
to be culturally enriched.
That's right.
You don't have to have that.
That's right.
You have done so many wonderful things. As I was doing a little bit of research, I picked out several things.
Okay.
And I just want to tell me if I'm saying anything that's incorrect, because you've done so much. I was trying to gather it all together. You were a producer for XM Major League Baseball channel.
Right. I helped set up the channel. Basically, when XM first came on the air, we went on with 150 listeners. Now they're, with Sirius XM combined, it's over 30 million.
Whoa.
So, I was there the day they turned on the switch. They kind of mapped out which way they wanted to go, and they knew their whole idea, at least XM's idea, was to have fans. And who are better fans than the sports people? So they pursued college sports, they pursued Major League Baseball and things like that. And I was one of the people who first helped form that baseball channel.
That's amazing.
And have been to spring training and World Series and everything else. So yeah.
Associate producer for the 2006 Grammy Awards, XM. Tell us about that.
Well, XM at that point covered everything Grammys. We see the Grammys and we think of Grammy night.
Right, that's true.
But it's not. It's a week, almost 10 days of awards, because they'll say, earlier in the week or earlier today, other awards were handed out. Well, we were there. I went to the Jazz Awards, the Gospel Awards, the Classical Music Awards. They give out all kinds of awards. And so we covered every single bit along the way. And then we were still there also for the final show. But it was a group of people. And we had a book that was like this thick of every single contact person, where we were supposed to be, because it was all over the Beverly Hills and Hollywood areas, because there are multiple theaters, because some things are going on at the same time. We went down to USC. The final Grammys are generally held now at the Staples Center. Right. But back then, so many of the, a lot of mentorship went on there too, where they would call in artists and stuff like that. Jimmy Jam, you're hanging out with him every day, finding out that he's actually colorblind and how he matches his clothes up with little things that are sewed inside it, that kind of stuff. And so that was fun. It was truly an experience of a lifetime, and I was so grateful to be a part of it.
So as associate producer, what were
basically
your
we were
specific
making
duties?
sure that everything was on the air, and occasionally I would be a host, like with the gospel and jazz ones. I would co-host with my friend Scott Walterman, and so we were just making sure everything was on the air, what times, if we needed to go get people. I met Andy Griffith and Shirley Caesar, and sat down and actually did interviews with them. So it was fun.
That was
a
fun.
lot
It
of fun.
sounds fun.
It was.
Host of Red Cross Radio, which aided the government and the Red Cross victims of a Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
What was that like?
For 6 weeks, so much electricity and things was not working. Our radios that were put out at that point, the boombox type radios, ran on batteries. So XM I thought it was very visionary for them to send radios to all of the major Red Cross stations in, in Texas, and because we think of it only being in Louisiana, but Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, those radios went out, and we ran a full-time channel. And when I say I ran it. I'm talking about 18 hours a day. And we had a couple of reporters.
We had the studio.
Practically.
Yeah.
We had full contact with the Red Cross. We would have them on. I remember I worked a lot with a guy named Charlie Zarenko at that point. And so it was really, we were thanked for doing that. And I was also managed while it was going on. I had a lot of friends who lived in New Orleans. Girl I grew up with, woman I grew up with, Joan Cabarros, she and her husband had totally renovated their house, and they lived in the 9th Ward. And when she left with enough for a couple of days, their kitty and all of their papers. Well, their house was flooded, all water all the way up practically to the ceiling, had, completely condemned. They lost everything. But, again, because they knew, had insurance and things like that. But the thing that was really key for him, Lloyd, was he was the maintenance man at Metropolitan Hospital, which was the hospital where they sat for 7 days. They carried everybody up the stairs and that kind of stuff. And I was able to have them on to talk about the experience. And one of Joan's cousins delivered a baby during that same time in the attic of a house where they were stuck. Wow. So those are the kind of stories I was able to get. Another friend who is a truck driver was able to get him on, and he was talking about the delivery of trucks from all over the whole area and things like that. It was really, was an exciting time, and we were hopefully making a difference.
Yes, and you did.
Yeah.
Now here's a big one here. From 2013 to 2017, you were the host of the Maggie Linton Show, a 2-hour award-winning weekday talk show on Sirius XM Urban View, Channel 126. Tell us about that. That's a long time.
Yeah, well, I ran book radio. I ran book radio before then, and that was basically, we did a show once per week with another woman named Kim Alexander, and we did audiobooks on the air. And, had a lot of different authors come to us and say, hey, can our audiobooks go down on the air? And that was a whole thing that we did. We went live from Book Expo America and that kind of stuff. But every time I saw my boss, because Sirius had come in, and we could tell they weren't going to really keep up with the book channel, and I'd say to my boss, if anything should happen to book radio, I'd really like to do my own talk show. And he goes, oh, I don't know, but we'll see. And one day he came to me and he says, well, I got good news and bad news. I said, well, what's the bad news? He said, we're canceling book radio. I said, shouldn't we call Kim in? And he says, no, it's only going to be bad news for her. And he says,
no.
but for me, he says, that talk show you've been wanting? And I said, yes. He said, well, you're going to get your own talk show. And I said, I guess it's going to be on the Black channel. And he says, well, why would you say that? And I said, because everybody Black practically that's on the air, unless they're sports, are on the Urban View channel, and that's fine. And he says, so do you know what you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about everything, because people don't want to. People, think of how many times you've listened to something on the radio or on TV, Today's Show, Good Morning America, CBS Morning, and it sparked something in you. And I said, I want to be able to help people have better health, to learn about opportunities, be more financially secure, that kind of thing. So he got it. He says, when do you want to be on? I said, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday. And he looked at me, because my parents used to tell me, don't ask for something you're not ready to receive. And so, a lot of people go out and say, I want this, I want that, but then when they get it, they don't know what to do with it. But I knew what I wanted to do with it. And it was everything I wanted. And what's weird is when I go to California and I'm I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and we had a big ball out there, and I'm standing there, and Kevin Frazier, who's on one of the evening shows, and a friend of mine's going over to say hi to him, and I go over, and Kevin looks at me, he goes, oh my God, it's Maggie Linton. And I'm going, you know me? And he says, I listen to you every morning because I knew that my show would be on Morning Drive in California.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you're at 10 o'clock on the East Coast, you're 7 o'clock there.
7 o'clock,
and I wanted to be able to hit those morning drive people.
Wow.
And I did.
And you did.
And
That's
I did.
wonderful.
And it was fun. It was one of the joys of my life. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And we got 3 questions that we got to go through.
Hit me with them. I'll be shorter.
Okay. Associate producer for World War II Memorial Dedication and President Obama's Lincoln Memorial Concert.
Right.
That was exciting.
I have a friend, Lauren Klaas Schneider, who basically was the producer of the activities that actually went on. And, you know, she called me and she said, Maggie, can you help me? And I said, yes, I can. And to see the World War II Memorial, you know, ahead of everybody else, and see the performances as they went. And the same way with the Obama administration. We were there for 3 nights leading up to it. And, you know, seeing Beyonce and Stevie Wonder and, you know, Garth Brooks and just so many people come in. It was just absolutely wonderful. And everybody left their ego at the door.
Wow.
So it was wonderful.
Those are great
And I
memories.
also was, our band marched in Lyndon Johnson's inaugural parade.
Whoa.
So, you know, it's been fun.
It's been fun.
It's been fun.
Talk a little bit about your faith.
My faith is what's, you know, carried me all the way through. And like I said just a moment ago, you know, people say, okay, I want something, but are you ready? Well, I pray for it. Yeah. If you don't ask, you cannot receive. Ask, you know, and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find.
Yes.
Knock and the door will open. It may not open exactly when you want it to, but it will open.
Yes.
Yes.
Maggie Linton, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I have a hug?
You can have a hug.
You're welcome to come back
Thank you, Tia.
anytime.
It's
Thank you
truly
so
my
much.
pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me, and I really have enjoyed talking with you
Thank you.
and kind
It's
of
been
sharing
so
my
fun.
life.
Well, you know, you can come back anytime. I mean, we missed a couple of questions, but maybe that means you'll come back and we'll
Okay.
talk some more.
Ask and you shall receive.
Thank you. Our time is up, and we hope that you have enjoyed our interview with Maggie Linton. She is indeed a woman of grace and honor, and I just want to personally thank her for all of the contributions that she has made to broadcast journalism and to the personal encouragement and assistance that she has given to so many others in the media. See you next week, same time, same place on Skills to Pay the Bills. Bye-bye.